I just always had that faith that something will happen, the right thing will come along at the right time. All I knew at that point was I just needed to stop and go figure myself out. I had to come to this place of acceptance that like, okay, wow, I have to chase my dream without my mom's approval. And when COVID hit, it made just everything extra worse. I was like, oh, I can't go out anymore. This is like my worst nightmare. I'm stuck in Singapore.
Welcome to Before We Get There, the podcast where we explore people's journeys, how they got to where they are, what keeps them pushing forward, and where they eventually want to get to. I'm your host, Nicholas Braman, and today I'm joined by Ruby Tan. Ruby is a Singaporean who chased her dreams of becoming an outdoor adventure guide all the way to New Zealand. Ruby has an amazing story because her passions and what makes her life fulfilling, kayaking, outdoor climbing, hiking, and more, don't really exist in Singapore. She had to give up her traditional 9-to-5 job and move across the world to find where she felt she belongs. We discuss her journey, the many challenges and triumphs along the way, and much more. Enjoy the show. Hi, Ruby. Thanks so much for being with me here today.
Hello.
Good to have you on the show. So what I wanted to start off with, you've lived in a couple of other countries outside of Singapore. What's your experience been?
Oh, I would say the longest that I've lived elsewhere would be in New Zealand, but I have worked short periods of time in other places. I can't quite comment on the other places, but I consider New Zealand my home. Like when I left Singapore for the first time, not for the first time, but when I got here for the first time for a course, I think that was when I felt like it was home. For a reason, I just felt like I fit in with the people. The humor was the same. I liked the lifestyle. I liked the values that the culture seemed to prioritize. So I was pretty happy here.
Yeah, that's good. That feeling of comfort and feeling like you fit in when you first got to New Zealand.
Yeah.
Did you feel that you didn't fit in Singapore? Or was it only you realized after you'd been to New Zealand that, wow, this really suits me?
I always feel, I think this is something I'm still working on, but the whole maybe shame of not feeling like I belonged in the place where I was born in and feeling like, especially with I knew that Singapore was not the country for me when I was 16 because I had gone and visited an auntie who lives in the Gold Coast. And I think it was the first time I realized that I could live life differently, like different to what I know. And I knew at that point that Singapore was not for me and I was always finding ways to get out. But then I think because people would say that, what's wrong? What's wrong with Singapore? Singapore's so good. You've got this, you got that, blah, blah, blah. You're a little ungrateful, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, is there something wrong with me for like not loving the place that, or feeling like I belong to the place that I was born in? There's that. So I suppose anytime someone asked me that, I almost feel like, am I allowed to say that I didn't feel like I belonged in Singapore? But yeah, I guess like I didn't. I maybe found the pace of life too fast. It was people busy all the time. I felt that they valued, that the culture in general valued very different things than what I valued. Love the outdoors, not very much there. I hate making me grumpy. So I'm like, grumpy all the time there. But yeah, I would say that I felt like I didn't belong from when I was a young teenager and then tried to find where it was that I belonged. Spent a lot of my life trying to figure that out.
So how did you, because growing up, you went through the regular Singapore path. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you did extra tuition and took your PSLE and all this stuff. Right. Something like the love of outdoors, for example.
Yeah.
When did you discover that? Because as you mentioned, Singapore doesn't have that many places to do a lot of the stuff that you do now.
I don't actually know, but I know that when I was a kid, I loved running around outside and loved exploring and loved running through the canals or the longgangs and like picking up snails and creating these adventures with my friends and just running around. I remember that in secondary school, I joined a police like extracurricular activity. It was like a National Police Cadet Corps. I joined them just so I could go camping. Like just because I knew that in the extracurricular activity, I could put up tent and then learn about not and go on this trip and camp and do kayaking and all that stuff. And I felt so happy. And then I think that was when it started to become clearer and clearer that I liked being outside. I liked being in the forest. I liked hiking. Yeah.
That's interesting. It makes me curious because when I was a kid, I did grow up doing all that kind of stuff. My parents took me camping a lot, hiking, boating, water skiing.
Yeah.
Went to summer camps when I was in my preteens and early teens where we went on river rafting and kayaking. And I enjoyed it, but it's not something that is important in my adult life as far as hobbies or I live in Singapore, right? So I go hiking so-called hiking, it's walking, but around Bukit Timah Hill. But camping, for example, I certainly have fantastic memories of a kid sitting around the campfire. It was so nice to roast marshmallows and feed the fire. And I enjoyed then going to sleep in a tent. But now thinking about going to sleep isn't really as attractive to me.
Yeah, no, that would be gross, actually.
I'm just wondering if because you weren't as exposed to those kind of activities earlier, if you had been, if you would still have as much passion for it as you do now.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I do wonder sometimes. Now that I'm older, I feel nature is such an integral part of me. I can't imagine that if I had been more exposed to it when I was younger, that it would change my relationship with it. I do wonder if I would have made a career out of it. I'm sure I would still be involved in it because it's just after that year when I visited my auntie and then got a bit older, started earning my own money. Whenever I traveled, I would book onto rafting trips. I would book onto a guided walk. I'd book onto a kayaking trip. It was like an absolute must that if I was on holiday that I was doing something outdoors because I can't quite do it in Singapore because of just the geography of it. So yeah, it took me a while before I realized that it was something that I could do as a career, because I suppose as a student in Singapore, I wasn't really exposed to outdoor education. And so I never saw that there was like, oh, here's an instructor. And I suppose, I don't know why it didn't hit me that I could go be a guide, because I obviously was, as a client, I'd book on trips with guide, but it just never occurred to me. I was like, oh yeah, you could do that until much later.
So let's talk about that, about your career path. When you first started working as an adult, you was here in Singapore, and what were you doing?
I started out in the media industry. So when I finished my O-levels, I went to Temasek Polytechnic long story short, I signed up for a different course, but swapped to the course I should have been doing from the start, which was communications and media management. So I enjoyed writing. I was interested in broadcast and film. So picked that course. And then when I finished, I ended up doing an internship with a publishing company. Realized that I really enjoyed writing and seeing like my words get printed on like a magazine. It was pretty cool. And then, so I stayed and did that. And then I ended up writing for Her World, so the women's magazine. I was there for about 2 years before I hit that weird quarter life existential crisis. What am I doing with my life? Why am I here? This is not meaningful. It's super fun. It's super fun. Don't get me wrong. Going to restaurants and try fitness classes and talk to some really cool people that interview people as well. So a lot of fun, but lacked meaning. And I think I just hit that point where I was like, oh, actually, what am I doing with my life? But anyway, I took a holiday, so quit the job, ran to this random village in Nepal to stay with his family on their farm. And I planted cucumbers for them. And twice a week, I'd go to the local village school to just run some fun English activities. And during that time, I was trying to figure out, okay, so what do I want? What do I want to do? And I didn't actually have any answers, but I was like, okay, then you know what? Just put 3 things down on a piece of paper. What are your priorities? And the very first thing I wrote down was, I have to be outdoors. I don't know what job it was going to be, but I got to be outdoors. 2, I wanted it to be a job where I could leave positive impact on people or inspire people. And then the third one was, because I love traveling, that if I could take people traveling, like that's a bonus. And then I just left it at that, came back and still trying to figure out. And then just through a series of serendipitous occurrences and internet clicking, I found out that there was a school in New Zealand that has a course that would teach me all the skills that I need to like function outdoors, to work as a guide or an instructor. Um, and so eventually I find out I enrolled for the 2017 cohort and then left. And prior to that, so in between starting the course and leaving the magazine, I worked for an international school in the service learning department. And that was when I realized that I enjoyed working with young people and I was pretty good at building rapport. And I found myself being really fulfilled when they had like an aha learning moment. I was like, oh, this is great. This feels really good on the inside. And then so it was a combination of, okay, let me go study outdoors and then work with young people. So that's how I figured out, okay, yeah, that's the path forward. That's what I want to do. And then landed in New Zealand 2017. And my life has never been the same, but so much better. I'm happy.
Yeah, it sounds like you found an amazing fit for what you're passionate about and what makes you happy to go to work.
Yeah.
But let's go back to quitting your job, because I think that's, you went pretty quickly over that, but it's a huge decision. And to just quit your job and then go and live on a farm in Nepal.
Right.
What was that process like? How long did it take you to make the decision? What were your worries and concerns? How did you feel after you were actually done?
Yeah, I don't know if it's naivety or privilege or maybe a combination of the two, but I always had this peace that, I don't know, I was always going to be okay in life. My mom was definitely not happy with me quitting a job before I found another one. But I was like, I'll find something. I just always had that faith that something will happen, the right thing will come along at the right time. All I knew at that point was I just needed to stop and go figure myself out. Because if I didn't have a direction, then what's the point of signing up for some other job that I'm not going to be happy at? That was, I think, even from when I was a younger adult, I had already had a deep understanding that time is a thing that I can't get back. That I know that money will always come in, but time is something that I can't get back. And I think for me personally, I need to do a job where I find meaning and enjoy it. Oh, I do wish I was one of those people who could compartmentalize. I'm just at work and then I earn my money. And then on the weekends, I do the things that I love. But I can't. I wish I could, but I can't. I would almost say it was not that scary to quit because I either naively or had a lot of faith that things will work out. And I don't remember how long I was jobless for.
So do you remember how long it was from the time you had the first feeling and thought in your head of, oh, I'm not happy at my job anymore, to when you actually quit?
I don't know. It might have been 2 months. I feel like, I think it was about 2 months.
That sounds really quick. I think if everybody quit a job after 2 months when they weren't happy, there would be a lot more people who quit their jobs.
I totally recognize like now as an older adult, paying my own rent. And if I had a family, I don't think that decision will come as easy. So that's why I am like fully conscious that me doing these things on a whim was very specific to my circumstance of like I only live with my mom so that my mom was healthy, financially capable. And if I had a family and other commitments, it would have been quite different.
So when you decided to go for this course in New Zealand, were you thinking then that, oh, I found the career for me, I'm going to go and do this? Or was it more of an exploratory move to see, oh, what is this going to be like? Am I going to be able to do it?
Whoa. Okay, so I did know, I was like, this is it. I've always dreamed about working outdoors. As soon as I figured out that there was such a career, I was like, oh my God, that's it. Like, I can be outdoors all the time. I'm going to take people hiking and teach them how to carry a backpack, teach them how to kayak, take them on these awesome journeys. I'm like, that is the dream. But I remember on my second day of the course, I was feeling so completely overwhelmed. I went to my tutors and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to talk this course. Like, I was just so in over my head as like this Singaporean city girl in like the middle of nowhere in New Zealand. I definitely was overwhelmed. Lots of things made me cry. Kayaking made me cry. I'm terrified. I think the only thing that didn't make me cry was rock climbing and kayaking. Yeah, that was the only two things. Everything else was hard. And I questioned it. How are you going to take people on trips like you? You're struggling while hiking. You're struggling with your backpack. You're not fit enough. And then you're like terrified of the river. How are you going to do this? So definitely a lot of moments of, I don't know if I've just wasted all my money. And not even my money. I've had to borrow money from my aunties to be able to pay for the course and live there. But yeah, a lot of the times I was just like, oh, I just got to keep trying. Got to keep trying. Got to keep. I'm going back to talking to my tutors on the second day of school. And I said, I'm really scared because I don't know if I'm going to pass this course. And without a beat, the two of them were like, you're going to pass this course. I was like, you think, oh, I don't believe in myself right now. And they were like, you are going to pass the course. They were like, had no doubt. And I just thought to myself, I was like, these guys have seen like hundreds of students come through, right? And if they think I'm going to pass, then I'm going to believe them for now, because at that point, I didn't believe in myself for sure.
And so was that second day the closest you got to feeling like it wasn't going to work, or were there other tough times?
Whoa. No, there were definitely pockets of times where I was unsure. It was not just like hard skills, but living skills. Like I hadn't driven for a long time in Singapore. I had a license, but my family didn't own a car, so didn't have that. I realized I learned that driving manual was important in the industry because a lot of companies will have vans to transport gear and they're often manual. So I was like, all right, I have to learn manual now in this country. And then cultures like lingo. So it was all these little things that ended up being perseverance and the support of my friends and my tutors.
And so you passed the course,
Yeah.
and then were you able to start working in the industry right away, or did it take some time?
I was meant to do a second year of the course. The school failed an audit, so they weren't allowed to enroll international students. And so for that reason, I could not continue my second year, which I was really gutted about because a couple of reasons. One, I love my classmates. I wanted to hang out with them. Two, the second year would give me a diploma, so I would graduate with a diploma at the end. But because I've only finished the first year, I now only have a certificate. So after spending all that money, I now only have a certificate. But I scrambled anyway to find a job so that I could stay in the country, and I ended up working with an outdoor center.
We've talked to several people on the podcast who don't have traditional careers. And
Right.
as we always mention, Singapore is a pretty rigid
Mhm.
society as far as the life path goes. Everybody knows
Yeah.
what's the quote unquote best way to go through life and
Ooh.
graduate and start your family and all this.
Yeah.
But obviously there's a lot of people out there who don't follow that path. And,
Mhm.
and those are definitely the people I'm interested in talking to
Yeah.
as well. So what did your family and friends back home think about when you embarked on this adventure?
It was really funny because most of my friends were like, of course, that's so you. And then I remember talking to my mom and she was so upset. She was so upset. She didn't understand. She was like, what? You want to quit? So at that time I was working with the school, right? But she was like, you want to quit your good job and waste your degree and go work outside? She was like, she did not understand. And at that point, when you're a child whose parent is not being supportive, it's really hurtful. And at that point, I had to come to this place of acceptance that like, okay, wow, I have to chase my dream without my mom's approval. And that sucks, but I got to do it because I knew on the inside, this is what I need to do. This is what like my spirit's calling for. And obviously, when I was able to move away from the pain, I understood why she reacted that way. I know she didn't talk to me for 2 weeks. I understood why she reacted that way. My mom grew up in poverty. And so for her, like job security is a really big thing. Money is a really big thing. So I understood why she was like, what? You're like not even going to work for a whole year. You're quitting your job and you want to work like outside. Like, where's the money? How do you look after yourself for that? So once I started working, I actually, for me, in order, because I understood where she was coming from, a place of concern, but it comes out in a hurtful way. I feel like after several years of that, she finally relaxed and realized that I was fine, that I was happy doing what I was doing, and I was earning enough money to stay in a nice place. So I wasn't like renting a terrible place. I was able to eat good food, had good experiences. So she stopped ending the phone call with, so when you coming home? When you hurry, I was like, what's the point? I don't want to. But yeah, so she's like way more relaxed now about it. But it was hard. It was very hard, like just feeling like I didn't have the support of her parents.
That's good. Yeah, I think it comes from a place of love for sure. But
Exactly. Yeah.
if she didn't raise you to be a good and strong and independent person, then you wouldn't have been able to make that decision for yourself.
No,
So in the end,
yeah.
she should be proud of you and of how she did as a mother to raise you.
Yeah, hope so. Traditional Asian parents, they don't give me too many words of affirmation. They just like, you good? All right. Here's some food. That's her love language.
So then you ended up moving back to Singapore during COVID.
Yeah.
And how was it coming back? Did you have reverse culture shock? Were you...
Oh, Nick, that was actually like one of the worst times of my life. I'm not saying as, I suppose, a fairly privileged person. I was in a long distance marriage throughout my course and subsequent years of work. And then it just got too hard, too much. We had issues. And I just thought, okay, I need to prioritize my relationship. And so with a very heavy heart, I had to come back. And that's the thing, it was like everything fell into place. There was a position open at this international school that I was working at, and the timing all lined up. So I was like, and I always think to myself that it meant to be, it'll happen. And so it did. So I came back and started work with the school in August of 2019. And then so obviously shortly after COVID happened. So I said yes to this job because the role involved a lot of travel, which meant I'd be out of Singapore most of the time, doing outdoor things and then coming back. And then the school, international school, pretty well-to-do. So they would also send me on like occasional trips further. I got to go whitewater kayaking in Nepal, which is amazing, all paid for. But anyway, so then COVID happened, and that was probably the time in my life I almost feel a little vulnerable talking about it, because it really was like I really did get to a really bad place, and I had to talk to a therapist, and that really helped. So yeah, I was like depressed a lot. And I was also trying so hard to not make my partner feel guilty, because when I made the decision to come back, I knew that I knew that it was my choice. So I didn't want it to be like eventually I get resentful of him because like, you made me come back, because it wasn't that. It was like, I chose to come back, and I had to walk away from this place that I finally found home, and I had to walk away from that. I didn't know when I was going to go back. So reverse culture shock. I went from just walking down the street to when I walk, I have to make calculations of who's going to cut into my path. And if there's a random auntie who's going to stop and use a phone in front of me, you got to chew up. And so that's pretty rough. I think I didn't really process grieving New Zealand, and eventually learned from a therapist that because I didn't have that process, that's why festering on the inside. And then when COVID hit, it made just everything extra worse. I was like, I can't go out anymore. This is like my worst nightmare. I'm stuck in Singapore. I can't. Yeah, so that was pretty rough. And then once borders started to open, I did another crazy thing, which sometimes I think back, I'm like, maybe that was one of the times there was a mistake. I left the school in July 2020. Was it 2021? And I thought I could go back to New Zealand, but I couldn't. And I ended up traveling. The travel channel with South Korea opened. So I went there. And then I went to Turkey to visit a friend. Then I interviewed for a school, South Korea, and they just do seasonal work. And then I got that job, and that kickstarted the cycle of working overseas, coming back to Singapore, working overseas, coming back to Singapore. And then eventually finding my way back to New Zealand.
We've actually talked about this before,
Mhm.
but I remember you telling me about that feeling of like grief and losing New Zealand, which
Whoa.
was your new home. And it didn't click until now that I've actually had that feeling before.
Mhm.
The second time I moved back from China, that was 2000, end of 2007. So I was 27 and I'd been living in Shanghai for about 2.5 years. And it was the right timing to move back, but it was also propelled by visa issues. The school couldn't renew my visa or what have you. But it wasn't, for me, I think it wasn't so much of feeling like I lost a place that was my home, although there was some of that, but it was more like the freedom and the, like a completely different world, which I can imagine it's the same from New Zealand or Singapore to New Zealand and back.
Yeah.
So China was living in Shanghai, 25 million people or what,
Yeah.
completely opposite of where you
Oh my
were in
God.
New Zealand, but completely foreign and exotic in a different kind of way.
Yeah.
And going back to where I was from, and I was going to restart going to university there and all these things, that was just like, felt like going back to daily life, whereas the last 2.5 years, even though I was working and I was doing all these things, it was so new and different that it felt like an adventure all the time.
Yeah.
It felt like a completely different world. So it never really clicked before when we talked about this, that actually I do know that feeling. So do you think was the main challenges that you were having and how poorly you were feeling, was that from leaving New Zealand and not being able to stay there? Or I guess it was probably compounded when the job that you took with the school, you weren't able to do what you were expected to be able to do and go out and travel and lead groups to other countries.
I think when I first left, it was just the feeling of, oh man, I had my dream life and I had to walk away from it, and I chose. So I couldn't even blame anyone. And I suppose I was also trying to be careful to not do that because I make my own choices. But it was like, I had spent, so from when I was 16, went to New Zealand when I was 29, 13 years of dreaming of living somewhere else where I could be like myself. And so when I walked away just a mere like a year and a half-ish later, I was just like, I wanted to stay forever. I'd made friends and it's just having that life. Like I could go on a whim, drive off to some mountain and chill there. And I can message friends, be like, you want to go see kayaking? Sweet, let's go. And then coming back to nothing, none of that. And yeah, it was definitely all of it. And yeah, I think just wow, it took me so long to find home. I had it. Now I have to walk away to prioritize something else.
So now, 7 or 8 years later, and you're back in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Looking back, is that journey of moving back to Singapore and then having to find your way and be able to eventually find that life that you want to live again,
Mm-hmm.
do you think you're better off from having gone through that, or do you wish that you just stayed in New Zealand the whole time?
Wow, that's not sure how it question, Nick. Damn. Oh, wow, that's hard. I feel like the textbook answer is to say, no, I wouldn't do anything differently because then I wouldn't turn out the way I did. But I don't know. If I could have avoided all of that, I would call it trauma. To me, being stuck in Singapore was like traumatic to me just because of who I am. I know it was, the worst place to be, but just getting who I am, it was very hard. Like, it would have been nice to skip all of that because it's actually affected my mental state now. I have a lot more anxiety than I used to as an instructor. And I am upset about it sometimes because it affects my confidence in myself when I'm outdoors. So obviously when I was starting out, had a lot of insecurities, but then I would put myself in uncomfortable situations because I knew that would make me a better instructor. I am so much more hesitant now because of this anxiety, and you're really upset and frustrated with it. I haven't come to terms with it yet, but yeah, I do wonder if I didn't go through that, would I have the new level of anxiety? Because I didn't used to be like that. So yeah, that's a hard one, Nick. I don't know, because I suppose the truth is you can't turn back time, but I think maybe I made the best of what happened. And I can say that I am proud of myself for the growth that I've had through that hard time. It definitely made me more emotionally mature and resilient, but it had also given me a new set of issues that I'm still working. Yeah.
So that anxiety, is that coming from being afraid you're going to lose everything again if you can't keep working for the same company, or what is the anxiety coming from?
I think it's just a new, how do I phrase this? Like my body doesn't feel that brave with discomfort anymore, if that makes sense. Like maybe my tolerance for discomfort used to be like here, but now that I've gone through that state, like just maybe way more protective. So my boundaries for discomfort is now here, where it used to be here. So I had way more tolerance for feeling uncomfortable, feeling like insecure. But now I'm just a lot more protected. And so whenever there's something that feels uncertain, my body's, oh, I don't like it. Let's go back to certainty. And it's sad because I feel sad for myself because I used to pride myself on being okay with uncertainty. Look at me, this freaking Singaporean 29-year-old, like not even some young person, right? Like almost 30, goes off to New Zealand to study this thing, like in the outdoors, crazy environment, and did all the crazy things and survived it. And we're like, yeah, and wants to embody that. And then now I'm like, oh, I just like ask more questions. I like worry about the weather more. I like need to know things that are. So it is something that I'm working. So I think, yeah, it's just that my tolerance for uncertainty has become smaller because my body reacts so much more strongly to uncertainty because of going through COVID in Singapore.
And so once you were able to start going back out of Singapore and you were working with the kids in Korea, taking them on outdoor activities, how long did it take you to start to feel that you were back on the right track?
Oh, yeah, really quickly. As soon as I'm in a different country, as soon as my task is my schedule for the day, like meet students, run the intro, brief them about the week, check their gear, teach them how to pack a bag. I'm like, I know this stuff. This is me. This is what I love doing. I'm good at it. But definitely very quickly. Definitely there's a couple of jitters because I remember my first like South Korean season. So the job with the school in South Korea, and my very first one after COVID, I definitely was a bit nervous. I was like, oh, can I still do this? Do I remember how to teach a kid how to pack a backpack? But then as soon as I started, like, I was like, oh, I do know how to do this, it just comes back. So then it was, I was very happy. And then also I was now once again amongst people who love the outdoors. So it was very easy to like, who wants to go climb this mountain on our day off, wants to go climbing, we were in Incheon in Songdo, so which is like an hour and a half by public transport to Seoul. Wow, who wants to go into Seoul to have a meal? And so it was so nice being among the like-minded people and then exploring a new country again. Not so new to me, like a new, not Singapore, outside of Singapore. Yeah, to go eat different foods and hear different languages being spoken on the street.
Yeah, and living somewhere is always different than just traveling there.
Yeah, totally. We had a staff apartment, so bit different to staying in a hotel for sure.
So this also might be a difficult question,
Really?
But theoretically or hypothetically, do you think someone like yourself who doesn't want to follow the traditional career path and feels called to do something else, especially outdoors, do you think if for some reason and you could not, you only could live in Singapore, could you find a fulfilling end work path?
I think about this a lot because I suppose if for any reason there was another COVID and I had to leave New Zealand, my passport's Singapore, so that's where I'm going. I think about that sometimes. And I think in amongst the grief that would occur, I'd probably have to find a way. I think there will always be, because nature is such a big part of me, then if I go back there and say I wasn't allowed to travel, there would always be just this really big part of me that I couldn't express. And so I wouldn't be living my full life. So it does scare me, the idea, because, wow, like how deep do you want to go? Can I talk about trigger warning topics? Okay.
Go for
Well,
it. Go for it.
So I'm trying not to judge myself for it, because sometimes when I think about it, I'm like, I judge myself. Oh, come on, it wasn't that bad. But I basically got to a place where I just wanted to kill myself, because I just thought, given who I am, if I can't express this really big part of myself, then what's the point of living? So I got to that really bad place. And obviously, who's gone through a depressive episode would understand the spiral. You like get to a bad place, everything's shit. And then you just keep going down, and you really need external help to pull yourself out. But living a meaningful life is very important to me. I wonder if maybe I continue with consistent therapy, I would find some way to cope, find new meaning in life. But that's what scares me. I'm just like, if this really big part of who I am, I can't express, then what's the point? Let me just leave, and then I believe in reincarnation. Maybe I come back, try again. Hush. Yeah. So I think I'm unsure. I'd like to stay optimistic and be really mentally resilient, be like, oh yeah, I could probably do it, but I'm not sure. I think I could, but I need a lot of help. And I have no problems admitting that I would need more. Yeah.
So maybe let's move on to something a bit lighter. But
I don't mind. I was just like, oh, do you need like a trigger warning on this episode?
no, I think it's important to share. Thank you for sharing, and
Yeah, of
it's
course.
important for people to hear
Yeah.
that. I think looking from the outside, it was a combination of factors where you're right that would put you in that state of mind. And if it wasn't such all of that coming together at one time, you likely wouldn't have ended up feeling that way. But of course, we're glad you came out the other side.
Yeah, I'm up here.
Are happy now. So this does tie in with your passions and working. I always think that's super interesting, because I always see on your day off, you go and you do some of the same activities you do for work. Like you go for a sea kayaking trip, or you go climbing. So it is such a big part of your life and what you love to do. And that's just hard to relate for me in my line of work, right? On my day off, I'm not going to go and do some more typing. I guess I do if I'm preparing for a podcast, but I'm not going to go and do the exact same thing I do for work, right? When you are working and doing the things that you love, the activities that you love, taking people sea kayaking, taking people climbing, hiking to these beautiful terrains, do you still have a work mode and a recreation mode, or does it blend together?
Yes. Actually, I'm happy to speak to that, because this is a problem in my industry, the outdoor industry. We work outdoors, right? Like people come on holiday, so their break is our work. Students go on camp, like I'm working, and yes, the place is beautiful, but I am like 24/7 on it. The kid's sick, I'm dealing with it, and I'm dealing with it in the wilderness. I wake up like before the kids get up. I go to sleep after the kids go to sleep for the really long day. So I can tell you, for a lot of times when I'm on my day off, I am not outside. I think indoors watching TV with a bag of chips. And then I feel guilty. I'm like, are you even an outdoor lover if on your weekends you're not ascending another mountain, going on a climb, or going down a river? And I felt like that for so long, because during the week I work, I'm so tired. I'm mentally and physically drained. And then the weekends, I got to do chores too. I got to do laundry. I have to buy groceries. So all of that. And then I'm just too tired to do anything. And now that I've met lots of people in the outdoor industry, it's a very common feeling of guilt. So we all love to do cool things outside. And then we secretly hide indoors on the weekends. And then we don't tell anyone. And then we feel bad because we're not outside recreating. And then the more you talk to people, the more, and I've met people who kayak like grade 5 rivers. So rivers are like 1 to 5. 5 is like insane. From that to like beginner instructors. And we all had the same thing. We're like, actually, I'm so tired. I don't want to go climbing. I don't want to go hiking. I need to do my chores and watch TV.
That's great.
Yeah.
So talking a little bit more about moving to a new country and being basically on your own.
in the outdoor industry, work is seasonal. So wherever you go to work, and especially as well for me, my visas are like tied to my employer. So I can get a visa because someone's hiring me. So my first port of call for making friends is my workplace. And then again, everyone's like-minded. So you just go there, you show up on your days of work, you meet new people, and then you ask who's free on your day off. You ask if they like to do this thing that you like to do. And they say yes. So you make friends, and then you go do the thing together.
Yeah, I've lived in you're talking about your workmates, and I think probably when you went to Korea, it was very similar. And when you went on your course, it was similar. I've been in those situations a couple of times where it's like a group of people and you're all in something together that's a bit unusual or forces you to be around each other a lot. And then you become friends outside of whatever it is you're doing. It's like, I would guess that going through military training or, some of those situations are similar, not as extreme, but you meet a lot of different people with very different backgrounds and personalities, but you have a bond that it goes beyond a casual friend that you meet in a normal life setting.
Yeah. And I think the industry just lends itself to that. But I suppose when you join whether you're a nurse or a banker or a doctor, you meet your colleagues. Everyone can be into different things. But if you go work as a sea kayak guide, everyone likes kayaking.
Yeah. So one other aspect I wanted to talk to you about moving to New Zealand, or it could apply to other countries as well. But so for me, I grew up in the US as a minority. The West Coast, Seattle, I grew up, there's certainly lots of Asians, but we're still not, it's pretty left-wing and open-minded there, but not 100%. There's still things that happen. And so it was interesting. It wasn't deliberate or conscious, but one of the things that I enjoyed when I moved to Asia was I felt like I could be completely anonymous. Like when I walk down the street, I'm the same as everybody else. And so for you, it's the opposite, right? You're moving to a country where, I don't know, does New Zealand have a lot of Asian population?
It depends on where you are. In the bigger cities, there is a bigger population of Asian, like immigrants and their children. So where, I guess, in some places, I suppose where I have worked, if I'm working as a guide, then there's lots of tourists in that town anyway. So I could still see lots of diverse faces. And then I moved to Christchurch. It's like second or third biggest city in New Zealand. So definitely stronger Asian presence, lots more Asian restaurants, which I love. Maybe the only place where I felt the most, oh my God, I am like the only Asian who's gray mouth, because obviously it's in the middle of nowhere.
So I always like to ask this question, which is, if you, 5 years down the road, if you look back from this point forward, what is going to make you happy? What is going to make you feel like you've been successful over the next 5 years?
I feel like at the moment, I am happy to continue with my line of work. I feel like just being here, I'm successful. I chased a dream. I am working. I am well regarded in the industry amongst companies that do know me. I nurture young people to discover themselves and hopefully develop into a good, kind human being. Keep myself healthy by going out because I have the freedom to. I would think that even if it was status quo, I'm doing the same thing 5 years from now, I'd still be happy.
It sounds like you've got it made then. So
I know. Look, 5 years from now, it's the same. I'm still good. But yeah.
Okay, Ruby, it was great having you today. So if people want to get in touch or want to ask about what it's like working in the outdoors industry or have questions about living overseas in New Zealand, where can they find you?
Instagram is probably the best place. So my handle is HeyRubyTan. Always happy to answer questions from anyone about anything, really, anything.
Awesome. Thanks again for your time. It was great to talk to you.
Thanks, Nick.
We'll talk soon.
Thank you for listening to Before We Get There with your host, Nicholas Braman. Please like and subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can also find us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Before We Get There Podcast. New episodes are released every Thursday morning. See you next time.